Hey everyone, I just want to clear up what's going on and what the problem is, the underlying problem with Canada, with Immigration Canada. So right now, Canada is telling us that they're following protocol and that they need to look into all of the adoptions and all of the information with the adoptions, and so they can't expedite anything. It's going to take as long as it takes, which could be up to 2 years. These children are already adopted, which means these parents can go anywhere in the world with the kids, which means that they're not necessarily waiting in the country and often aren't waiting in the country of adoption. So say Canada takes 2 years to go through the whole background of these kids. And then at the end of that 2 years, they figure out that there's something wrong. Well, you denying citizenship to that child doesn't protect that child. It just prevents them from coming to Canada. So if you're really interested in the welfare of the child, what you would do is allow the child to come into Canada on an adoption visa, just like every other country has, so that if there is something found out about the child's case or something that's not right, you now have them in your country. The parents are there. You can deal with the parents and you can protect the children. An adoption visa would look like this. You'd have a visa that would be processed, same time frame as any other visa that would be processed through embassies, so usually 2 to 4 weeks. And that child will be allowed to travel to Canada with their parents because they are their legal parents and have all the rights and privileges of a Canadian, because that's what they should have as the children of Canadians. And if you're not worried about the strain on Canada, you're worried about child's welfare, you should be willing to give them education and medical care because it's child welfare, it's for the benefit of the child. That visa should not have an expiration date. It should carry on until citizenship or PR comes through. This is going to prevent families from being separated for extended periods of time, up to 2 years at a time. It's going to prevent children from being put back in orphanages. Canadians are facing job loss and sometimes huge detriments to their careers because of it. And so having an adoption visa in place remedies all of that, but it still protects the child. It protects the child more because now the children are in your borders where you can actually protect them if you find out something's gone wrong, instead of them just sort of disappearing to another country when you deny them citizenship for some issue you find in their adoption. The other major difference between Canada and a lot of these other developed nations when it comes to international adoption is the fact that Canada requires nothing except for a proof of adoption at the end of adoption. So they want you to do part 1 of citizenship, background check on the parents, and then they literally tell everyone, we don't need anything else from the country of adoption until the adoption is finalized. That is very different than any other country. Every other country has far more involvement throughout it. They give a checklist of this is what we're going to require in order to prove that the adoption's by the standards of our country. They have way more involvement in it. And so the problem that we're facing now is that Canada's saying, the adoptions have to be performed in accordance to Canadian regulations. Well, I don't even know what that means. It could mean there could be no issue. But the fact is that if there is, you can't come in after the fact without giving any information through the process and now say it wasn't done according to Canadian regulations. It's not Canada, it's Uganda, and you told us you wanted no part in it until it was completed. So you can't be surprised if things aren't done exactly as you would have done them in Canada. If you would like to have a bigger part, then you have to have a bigger part from the beginning. You have to provide information to adoptive parents so they know what they're supposed to be getting for proof and to be able to put you in touch with certain people so that you can get the information you need. Because the reality is, in African nations, once that adoption is completed, the child welfare system now doesn't see that child as part of their issue anymore. They don't see them as part of their priorities. So they actually send people from Tanzania, for Uganda, they're going to send an investigator from Tanzania physically to Uganda to investigate the adoptions. They do this for every adoption case. How much time and money is that wasting when you could have just been a part of the adoption process and had things done along the way? Literally no other developed country has citizens that are being trapped in other countries. And there's actually been a story of a lady who had come to adopt from Ethiopia. She was there with families from all over the world. They all appear at the same time approximately to go through their adoptions. All of the other families from Australia, from Europe, from the United States, they were there for a couple of weeks, finished processing in the court, and they were gone. That family was there for 5 months, the Canadian family. The only family that was remaining there was the Canadian family. People listen to what IRCC says, and we have been getting conflicting information from literally every office that contacts us about what the protocol and procedures are. But that's really unfair to the parents who've never gone through adoption before, who didn't know any of this, because really all of this is just coming to light now, and it's getting a lot of media attention from a lot of families to bring it to light. But a lot of people have no idea, so they rely 100% on IRCC to give accurate and consistent information. And when that doesn't happen, then the families are really, really being punished for it. And then we're basically just being told, like, it's your own fault, you didn't look into it properly, or you didn't prepare. Absolutely not. When you go to agencies or when you go to the government and ask for the proper protocols so you can follow them, and you're given information, you take it at face value. Things can't change later on down the road, and you expect people to suddenly know that. If your own government officials can't get the same information correct from one office to the next, how do you expect your citizens to follow along? As Canadians and as a country, we stand on a platform that we pride ourselves on taking care of the most vulnerable people in the world. Our government does that and shows that by bringing in refugees and taking care of refugees and immigrants and people who really need help. And we as citizens support that. If we're allowed to do that as a nation and we're expected to do that as a nation, why are the individual citizens not supported when they try to do the same thing on an individual basis? So I hope this helps to kind of clear up some of the information as to what's going on. Basically, just a breakdown is all of the reason people are getting stuck is because adoptions have been 100% finalized, and we're 100% waiting for part 2 of citizenship or some sort of travel permit so we can go with our kids back to Canada. We're not waiting for part 1. We're not waiting for any other, we're not waiting for adoption papers. The families have all done 100% everything what they're supposed to do. We're waiting all on the Canadian government to process part 2 citizenship. And the reason it takes so long is because they physically send investigators into each country to look into all of the adoption processes of that country. But so you're putting more investigation, up to 2 years of time and money into investigating each child's adoption, where immigrants and refugees are allowed in with very minor background checks, very minimal time limits of waiting. And so we consider, refugees obviously urgent. They need a place to land. Well, it should also be considered urgent when a child has been adopted. There's nothing in that home country for the family. The family's risking losing financial stability, homes, jobs, everything. You're creating an emergency situation within your own citizens because you're not processing their papers the same way you're processing refugees. The way to remedy this, but implement an adoption visa, because that's how you're going to protect these kids. If you find anything wrong with the adoptions, if they're in your country, you can protect those children because technically they are the responsibility of Canada when the Canadians have adopted them. And so you can deal with the Canadian parents as you see fit, and you can protect those children. That's looking out for the well-being of the children. So to the Canadian government, there needs to be reform. Something needs to happen. This is just insane. There's so many families coming forward saying we're all stuck, and the Canadian government really just doesn't care, and they're not doing anything to try to change it. They're just saying they're following protocols, but they're not looking in any way to try to find ways to really improve those protocols so that this doesn't keep happening. You're basically just going to deter people from international adoption, which is horrible. There's children all over the world who need homes and who have no option of adoption in their own home countries because often it's stigmatized and adoption just doesn't take place. And so these children deserve a good home and a loving home just like anyone else. And by having protocols like this and things that take forever and could cost you your job, your livelihood, your family, and put strains on your marriage, people aren't going to even embark on that if they see that this is the norm for what happens in international adoptions in Canada. And so, protect your citizens. Show us that we're your priority and that building our families and bringing people in and supporting vulnerable people in the world by doing that you support us just like we support your decisions to bring in thousands and thousands of immigrants and refugees into our country. So, and to the citizens, just continue to build up and get behind, support these families that are stuck and continue to bring their stories to the media and to the front. Because the only way we're going to be heard is if the government sees that enough people care. We currently have a petition that has about 1,000 people that have signed it in the last 4 days. More and more people keep signing it. It's basically saying this: we need adoption visas. We need reform that Canadian families with minors and waiting in other countries should get priority over immigrants and refugees. It's not saying we shouldn't take in refugees and immigrants. It's just saying that your own citizens should take priority. The link to our petition is in the comments. If you can please sign it and just continue to spread the word that this is important to many Canadians. Thank you.